Welcome everybody to this Student Volunteering Week Making an Impact webinar. I said in emails out to student union participants that even not participating in Student Volunteering Week, this will hopefully still be helpful. And we'll be talking about impact, and you can relate this to any project or campaign that you're doing. So hopefully all of you are participating in Student Volunteering Week. Oh, video on. Please, video off. Even if you're not joining in with Student Volunteering Week, this will be helpful, but hopefully you are, and we'll give you, the whole webinar will be around the theme of Student Volunteering Week, but you compare that to any project or campaign, so you can use the knowledge that you're going to learn today throughout your role. So this is the first of 3 Student Volunteering Week webinars. The next 2 are detailed here. So on the 20th of November, 12 till 1 again, we'll be looking at cash, community and collaboration, and we'll talk a little bit more at the end of this webinar about what that entails. On the 8th of December, one about shouting about Student Volunteering Week, and again, I'll explain that at the end. I want to kind of say that you're in this webinar and chat about it on Twitter. The hashtag Student Volunteering Week is SVW2015. If you have any questions, that's our email address that Rachel and I look after Student Volunteering Week, so please email us. For those of you that are from student unions, you'll know that the Student Opportunities team delivers a monthly webinar. So for this one and the next 2 months, they'll be themed around Student Volunteering Week. But like this one, they'll be relevant regardless of whether you're involved or not. From January onwards, there'll be different themes for each monthly webinar, and they're the third Thursday of every month. So if any of you are interested in helping me run a webinar, if you've got something that you think other unions or other members will hear about, then let me know. Take notes and to participate through the chat bar. If you're watching this with listening to colleagues, then please feel free to chat, but make sure that you're muted so we can't hear what you're talking about. A lunch and learn webinar is that you can sit and have a break or have your lunch, so feel free to do that. We want to give you an hour of thinking time and space to think about something and to do a little bit of learning. That's the purpose of this session. So please feel free to take notes, but don't panic about writing absolutely everything down, because we will give you the slides afterwards, and Rachel is producing a document that will go over the kind of topics that we're going to cover today. We've just put this slide in just for your reference. Student Volunteering Week is from the 23rd of Feb to the 1st of March. Those of you that haven't got it in the diary yet, pop it in there. So today, that you'll learn today is that we'll give you an understanding of the national aims for Student Volunteering Week and how every institution can contribute to make it an impactful campaign. We'll learn a bit more about identifying methods for defining aims and objectives for Student Volunteering Week activities or just other campaigns and projects. And we'll get an opportunity, once we've talked a bit about the theory, to create an impact measurement strategy for Student Volunteering Week. And you'll actually start to do that today's session. So a pen and paper in front of you, just grab one note. It doesn't have to be, you don't need the paper, you just need somewhere where you can write down some notes. You do an exercise about halfway through. So that's something to learn. If any questions, please pop them in the chat bar. If we can't cover them during the session, we'll have a bit of time at the end where we can answer a few questions. And if we can't cover it in the webinar, then we will cover that at the end in a briefing document. So let's get started. Rachel, over to you.
So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what impact measurement actually is. Get this definition up here. So impact measurement is the process by which you measure what effects your program, project or initiative had or is having on an individual, community or the environment. So this is really what we're talking about today. This is just to give you some context. We can break that down a bit further. So impact is really that change that results from the activity. So let's say, for example, that you were looking at engaging more students in your kind of university community, in societies at university. The impact that you're trying to see is obviously that kind of community of engaged students at the end of what you're doing. So one would be to improve student engagement in societies. That you might decide to run some sort of awareness campaign, so maybe having posters, social media, lecture shout-outs, things like that. And then hopefully what you would see are lots of new members in different societies that would then contribute to that community engaged students. So those are sort of stages that we think about when we're looking at impact measurement. And ultimately that impact is that sort of long-term overall change that actually occurs as a result of your efforts.
There, we're really interested here about what you think it's important to do impact measurement for Student Volunteering Week. So if you've got any ideas about that, just pop that in the chat bar. So why is it important to measure the impact of Student Volunteering Week? And so that, just jot down ideas in the chat bar why impact measurement is important for Student Volunteering Week. Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully what you'll see is that your suggestions will be reflected on this slide. So this is kind of standard across all impact measurement. This isn't just for SVW. You guys are giving us really fantastic examples that are specific to SVW. So impact measurement in general is really important for two main reasons. The first is proving and the second is improving. Looking at proving, that's all about being accountable for what you're doing and being able to actually show that you are making a difference and that there is value in what you're doing. Again, that obviously links to providing evidence of value for money. So when if you are spending anything on your SVW activities, it's really important that you can show that that money was well spent and that that was worth putting the funding towards SVW. The third under proving is all about communicating the program's strengths and weaknesses. Do great impact measurement, it really helps you to lay a foundation for greater impact year after year after year. And obviously we just want Student Volunteering Week to keep growing and to get bigger and better every year. Fantastic suggestions coming in down the line. Thank you very much for those, everyone. The measurement is really important, is improving. So here about understanding the impact that you're making. You might have some expected impact. You might also have some unexpected results of what you're doing and some unexpected impact. So it's really important to measure all of that, to capture all of that, so that you can understand what effects your activities are actually having. Make comparisons. So from a national point of view, this might be comparisons with other big national campaigns. From your point of view, it might be interesting to compare the impact that your activities have against the impact that a university's activities on the road has, to get a sense of what the differences are there. Before about strengths and weaknesses, impact measurement really helps you to identify ways to improve or develop further. Ultimately, it just really allows you to make those very effective decisions about the future so that you're not choosing things blindly, and so that you've really got some knowledge and some great reasons behind why you might change things or keep things the same in the future. So these are the reasons why impact measurement is really important in general. As have all contributed fantastic suggestions down the side as to why it's particularly important for SVW.
Yes.
Now on to looking at our impact strategy in particular. So first of all, this mission statement is something that we wrote after the end of Student Volunteering Week 2014 to make sure that we've got a really defined mission for 2015. It's something that you can find on the website along with our vision and our individual aims. So if you're curious about any of that, if you want to refer to it in the future, you can find all of this on our website. Our mission is to deliver a fun, engaging and powerful annual nationwide campaign that raises awareness of the value of student volunteering, inspires students to make a positive impact in their community while they're at university, and encourages institutions to value and support such action. So this is an example of sort of a classic mission statement that outlines why we run Student Volunteering Week. The next slide will break down of some of these aims. So these are greater awareness of the value of student volunteering, students feel more inspired to make a positive impact in their community, and students are celebrated and that their impact is celebrated. I'll take you through each of these individually. If asked or if you feel a bit lost and confused, don't hesitate to ask questions. And again, all of these slides will be available afterwards for you to look through at your own time. So, achieving greater awareness of the value of student volunteering. What we're looking at this year is the number of institutions who actually participate. So that's all of you guys. We're really excited that over 100 institutions have already registered. So that's fantastic news. They'll be looking at the number of students who actually engaged at those institutions. So that will be something that we're counting during the week and obviously after the week. And we definitely cannot do that without your help. Then we're going to be looking at social media engagement. So who is aware of what we are tweeting about?
Sorry, just to interrupt, could someone mute their microphone because we can hear background noise and I can imagine it's quite distracting for the other participants. So just make sure, because otherwise you won't know what she's saying anyway. Please can you make sure that all your microphones are muted.
Okay. Yes, so it's really important that we're able to track who's engaging with us on social media, who's retweeting us, what is their reach, all that sort of stuff. So we track that. And also we've got a national blog as well that we'll be launching at the end of this month. So we're moving off the WordPress platform for this year and we're going to launch the blog in the website itself. The engagement of that as well, just to see how much that's raising awareness of the value of student volunteering. Besides that, we'll be really, really keen to hear from students on how important they feel that volunteering is to their student experience. So that's a question that we will be including in our students and also encouraging you to include in any student surveys that you write as well, because we think that that's a really great sort of example question for how we can measure the awareness of the value of student volunteering amongst students. Moving to the second aim, which is that students are inspired to make a positive impact in their community. What are we going to be looking at here? Well, we're going to be looking at the number of new volunteers or the number of new sign-ups. So obviously that would reflect that volunteers have been inspired to get involved and to join the work that you're doing. We'll also be looking at the number of partner organisations, because that's all about encouraging students to make a positive impact in their community, and partners are a really crucial part of explaining to students the difference that they make. The more qualitative feedback, we'll be looking at the percentage of students who feel motivated to continue volunteering as a result of Student Volunteering Week. If we get a really high percentage there, we could say that the campaign has been successful in terms of inspiring students to get involved. And also the percentage of students who feel encouraged to participate in action by our institution. So that might be by your department in particular, or that might be by the sort of institution as a whole. And we're really interested to hear from students what they feel, sort of the level of encouragement that they feel from the institutions that they attend. The thing that we're going to be looking at is celebrating the impact of student volunteers. So a crucial part of this for us is our celebration event and our Student Volunteer of the Year award. So we'll be looking at the number of award nominations that we get, number of student attendees that we're able to invite to the celebration event, and of course press is a really big part of this as well. You know, who's paying attention to us nationally and who's recognising the fantastic impact that student volunteers are making. Again, in terms of the qualitative feedback, we'll be looking at how students feel about how well recognised they are as a result of SVW, so whether or not they feel sort of more part of this movement of students as of SVW. And we'll also be really keen to hear your feelings as well on whether SVW gave you a good opportunity to communicate your institution a bit more about the fantastic work that you're doing and perhaps to gain some extra recognition there. So that's our sort of strategy broken down into aims, and then hopefully you understand the distinction between the more quantitative side of things, which is all the numbers, and the qualitative side of things, which actually go a lot further to really show the impact that we're having.
Does anybody have questions at this stage on what we've said so far, or anything in particular about anything that Rachel just went through then? Is there anything on the slide that you can see in front of you that you don't understand or that you want some clarification on? Because that's a process. We're giving you quite a lot of information.
Question from Paula at King. So the question is, do we need to meet all of these aims? So I should have made that clear at the beginning. This is our national impact measurement strategy. So this is what Rosie and I work towards. And you'll see there that most of that is stuff that we can count ourselves, with your help, of course. It's completely up to you how you measure your own impact during the week. Obviously, we cannot prescribe a certain way of doing things, and you will all have very, very different aims. So some institutions might just want to focus on the celebration side of things, and institutions might be really, really keen to boost the number of new sign-ups, the number of people on their mailing lists and things like that. So we understand that. What we will show you in a minute is how you can get involved in national impact. We'll give you some ideas of ways that you can get involved, but you certainly do need to use this as your strategy, and we'll go into more details about the role that you can play if you want to in just a minute.
You are writing your own strategy. You are more than welcome to use this as a foundation, and you can pick bits out of it that you particularly want to focus on. So it's really to you, but we're not saying in having this here that all participating volunteering teams have to follow this, because that's quite a lot. So let's the next bit, which is about the methods for doing this. This is just to show you that whenever you write an impact measurement strategy, you need to think about how are you actually going to do those measurements. So there'll be a lot of counting, obviously, and a lot of asking you guys to sort of send us, how many people did you reach throughout the week, and how many new sign-ups have you had, and things like that. We'll also be writing some surveys that will go out, various questionnaires. It's okay that you're late, no problem. We'll also be looking at case studies and sort of general observations as well. So these are some of the methods that we're going to be using. This is the slide that I referenced just a minute ago. This is all about being part of our national impact. So what we're going to be doing is bringing together a survey template that you can send to your students who participate in SBW activities. We haven't quite figured out if that will be the kind of thing that you can just sort of and then add your own questions into. I think that is probably going to be the best approach, because then you can tailor it the way that you want that to work. We just need to figure out the logistics on that, but that's the idea. That's the type of thing that we're going for, where you can really be part of our national impact measurement, which we encourage you to do by using some or all of the questions that we're going to write. But equally, if you've got some additional aims that you measure, we can absolutely let you include those in your surveys as well. Scott just asked, can these surveys be done online? Yeah, absolutely. I can't think that you would want to do it many other ways, really. Absolutely. We will, again, like I said, we're going to look into the logistics of this in terms of the platform that we use. And, we're quite a long way off still from Student Volunteering Week, which is good news. So we've got plenty of time to sort this out. And we would definitely love to hear from you guys what sort of, like a preference for online surveys and things like that. That's really good. And Kieran's put that it would be helpful if they can add their own questions. So that's useful feedback. Yeah. That kind of thing's helpful to us to give us an idea of what's better for you. Yeah, absolutely. I think the really exciting thing about being part of the national impact is that if you do include questions and measurement in surveys that you send out, will then allow us to really sort of credit you as being part of the week and shout the fantastic impact that you've been making. If you have measurements and metrics that are completely off what our national aims and objectives are, it's going to be slightly trickier for us to sort of include that in the overall measurement of how successful the week has been. So you really want to be part of what we're trying to achieve and be part of all of the kind of national communication around the value of Student Volunteering Week. Then we encourage
encourage you to kind of join in with this national impact plan. But we will definitely make it easy for you to tailor it to your students and your aims and to add your own questions.
Question from Joe asking, are institutions compared publicly to see which have performed well and which haven't performed so well? I would just say something that we've designed for.
No.
We couldn't talk about it. I don't want to necessarily name and shame.
What I would say is that this is a fantastic chance for us to spot what is working really well and then shout about that and use those best stories and all of the success stories as case studies for future years. So every year we ask institutions to write case studies about these things, and we'll be sharing a lot of those over the blog and the website over the next few months so that you can take inspiration from institutions who have done great things in the past. But that really our primary purpose of having this national impact collection is to focus on all the fantastic stuff that's happening in order to support institutions who may be less sure about what things work well and things like that. No, it's absolutely not a comparison tool in the sense of sort of naming and shaming, figuring out who's not performing well. The whole point of having the national team, so Rosie and I here, is to support you guys and to make sure that you can deliver really successful and exciting student volunteering weeks for your students.
Yeah.
To move on to the next couple of points on here. So we would really encourage you to share your aims and targets with us before and after the week. So, and then with each other as well. You know, it'd be fun to hear what everybody is focusing on. I imagine that some institutions, like I said, will be really keen on inspiring more students to get involved. Other institutions might want to focus on celebrating. So if you share your aims before the week, that will allow you to spot other institutions who are thinking the same thing and then to work with them more effectively.
Yeah.
The other thing that we will be doing, just like last year, is sending out a staff survey. The difference this year is that we're actually planning on sending one survey before and one survey after the week. And this will not be hugely lengthy. We're going to keep it as concise as possible. But this really allows Rosie and I to track the effect that Student Volunteering Week has on the effect that our support has on you. We would really appreciate if you could get involved in that as well, both before and after the week.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about the theory, and you've had a look at the national plan that we have. So to give you a little bit of time to do now is just to think about what you're going to do and your impact. And doing this in this space is because we know you're all really busy and that you'll participate in this webinar, and it's because we do the same thing, that you go to some training session and then you don't actually follow and do the activity that you've just learned about. So what I'm hoping is that you'll just spend a few minutes now thinking about the impact that you'd like your Student Volunteering Week activities to have. Or if you do it for Student Volunteering Week, by all means think about a project that you're working on, you're going to start, or a team that you're supporting, leading, and do it for that. But what we do is step by step, so hold is the questions that we'd like you to so just grab your piece of paper, and I'm going to give you literally 30 seconds just what your aims might be. So thinking back to the aims that we talked about that we talked about a minute ago, so what we're trying to achieve with Student Volunteering Week 2015, think aims for the week are, or what your aims for a project that you're doing are. Down. Just jot them in the chat bar. Just write them down on your piece of paper. 30 seconds to do that. This is optional, but we do encourage you to do it because then when you leave this webinar, you'll have a few notes that are personal for you and your work that you can go away and work on. So Student Volunteering Week. At least a couple. They don't have to be perfect though, so don't panic about the wording being perfect. We're not going to test you.
Are those big picture things. So an aim is not something like we want to run 5 one-off events during the week. In our definition, an aim is sort of what the point of those events would be. So why are you running those events? If that's to expose to a diverse range of volunteering opportunities, then there's your aim. That's the big picture thing that you're going for. And how you get there might be those one-off opportunities. So make sure your aims are focused on those big picture outcomes.
And also this is it, which can be a bit, and sometimes a bit cheesy, and that's fine. That's okay. Something, don't panic if it's not perfect, but you've got some ideas down, hopefully. Now think about the next thing on the slide, which can you actually achieve those aims, and what activities will you do? So, for example, we've said if our aim was to increase satisfaction with all of our current volunteers, we run a thank you campaign on social media. We do a session to boost their skills, send a personal email to each volunteer, or we'd have specific Twitter and Facebook activity that we would do. So I'm going to give another few seconds just to jot down around or underneath your aims, how you're actually going to achieve those, what activities you're going to do.
In this case here, it's important to think about who your audience is with this. So your specific audience in that example aim there, it's current volunteers. So it might be interesting to run a couple of focus groups, for example, to figure out what makes volunteers feel satisfied and things like that, and then to base your activity on those things. So really tailor it to your particular audience. Yeah,
and we encourage you not just to write students. So if you're saying make students more volunteering, like which students particularly, is it that you don't have many mature students who participate in volunteering activities and that you want to target them? Or is it, if it's an awareness thing, is it that you want to specifically increase the awareness with your institution about volunteering activities that take place, or is it a wider community thing? So the more specific you are with who you're aiming at, the easier it is to identify what activities you need to do. 20 more seconds to jot down a few ideas. Okay. Third question, what outcomes be? So what happens because of the activities that you organised or the things that you did? What's the result of that? So thinking, we're looking at the example on the screen, we were going to do a campaign on social media, so something that would be an outcome for us would be the number of people that engage with the social media campaign. So that's something we're actually monitoring for the National Student Volunteering Week campaign. Intentions is to look at the media. So you could also look at how many volunteers attended your training session. Do some sort of research about the percentage of your volunteers who feel more satisfied with activities that you did. So just about what the outcomes might be from the activities that you did, to link together, and that those outcomes will link to your bigger aim. Some thoughts jotted down, a little bit more for you to do, and then we'll finish up and do a bit more info for you. So lastly, think about if you're going to measure your progress towards these aims. What's really worth considering here is that if you're doing some measurement, you do things before. So for example, with Volunteering Week, we're going to be measuring how you feel as staff and officers work on Student Volunteering Week. And we survey you. And last year we surveyed you afterwards, which was really useful, and we learned a lot from that. But we think that we're surveying you before and afterwards so that we can see the difference, and hopefully it's a positive difference. So you may need to do things before so that you can track and measure what you've actually achieved. So there's even things that you can do if you're trying to increase your social media presence. Just noting down how many Twitter followers you have, what your reach is, and how many Facebook followers you have. And after you've done the activities that you've done, has your Twitter followers increased? Have you got more engagements on Facebook? Have more liked your pictures? That kind of stuff. And that's really simple and actually doesn't take very long, but it gives you a really meaningful change that you can then talk about. Bullet points there for you to think about when you're thinking about measuring your progress. the numbers, so the quantitative stuff, so how many people, how many followers, but also think about the qualitative stuff. So perhaps you could interview 5 of your current volunteers with like key questions and ask them the same questions afterwards. So do you supported by your volunteering team, and then you compare your questions afterwards. Not just about numbers, think about the qualitative stuff too. Also think about intended and unintended impacts. So this is particularly interesting, I find, when you're talking about your institution or the community. So if you've got lots of volunteers going out and doing some community engagement, the impact might be one thing, but you might realise that actually all of the people who walked past your students doing that volunteering have a positive perception of students, and you don't necessarily intend that to happen, but it's so you can't predict all of your unintended impacts, but just aware of those and thinking about them really helps with this exercise. Positive and negative. There won't be too many negative impacts, but there might be, and this is a really good way to manage the risk involved with the events that you're planning. And also, if you've thought about the negative impacts, you can usually do something to either make it less negative or to remove it completely. Are going to happen, so either you spend quite a lot of money on a campaign, but all of the positive impacts from that campaign short-term and long-term. So you might not see a change this year, but the fact we ran a really wide and well-promoted student volunteering week might mean that next year more students join up and volunteer. So some of those long-term impacts might be, but also think about the short-term stuff. So a minute of thinking time to think about your progress towards your aims. In a second, Rachel's going to talk to you about some of the examples from last year, from Student Volunteering Week 2014, where a couple of institutions and volunteering teams did some good impact stuff. While she's doing that, it would be really interesting for us to see, from what we've made you do, from the notes that we just made you write down, was there anything that you found particularly interesting or do you have any questions for the other people in the space that you'd like answering? So was talking, just have a think about that and note any kind of observations that you had from doing your exercise and pop them in the chat bar. So a couple of good examples from last year.
Yeah. We put a call out on social media earlier this week to find out what some people had done, and we didn't really get very many responses, which I think sort of reports to Rosie and I the importance of webinar in the first place.
Yeah.
But I was aware of a couple of things that happened last year, so I just thought I would showcase those now. So LSE, for example, did a pre-Student Volunteering Week survey of over 2,000 students. And from these were not student volunteers, these were just general students. And what they found is that 40% of them had actually volunteered before, which gave them sort of an interesting baseline statistic for what they were doing. And they also uncovered what people's 2 motivations for volunteering were. And these motivations were all around helping others and because volunteering fits with values. What's interesting about this example, the motivations question in particular is an interesting one because that really allows you then to think about how to publicise your volunteering opportunities and which stories in particular you should be showcasing. So if, for example, one of the motivations had been all around employability, that would obviously be an incentive to maybe get a graduate recruiter to write a blog article about how important volunteering is, employability skills and things like that. And in these situations, helping others and fitting with values, it might be more worthwhile to get input from different community partners in of getting them to explain the fantastic effects that volunteering has on beneficiaries and things like that. I thought that was a really interesting example because the answers to those questions can really inform the approach that that particular volunteering team would then take to engage more new volunteers.
And just that, we've got 2 pieces of research that you would be able to access. So last year we released research called the Student Volunteering Landscape, and it talks about motivations to volunteering. If you want to look at that for reference, or if you don't have the capacity to do your own research around that gives you kind of an indicator of the national picture, and that talks about motivations, and that actually matches up with what LSE said, that most students volunteer to help others or to do something to support around them. And that's really interesting, helpful. And there's also another one called Mapping Participation. We'll link both links to those in the report at the end of this that we'll send to you, so that you can have a look at them if you need them. The participation one's particularly interesting around barriers and motivators to getting involved with a student, but you apply the theory to getting involved with a volunteering project or a volunteering cause. So that's hopefully. So another example.
Yeah, we're going to move on to Imperial College London. So last year, they, rather than surveying students before, actually gave a feedback form to every student who participated in an activity. So that was one-off events during the week and celebration events and things like that. Asked them a lot of different questions, but I'm just going to feature 2 of the questions here today. The first question was, have you volunteered before? And again, this was sort of the same knowledge as the SE survey, but what we're doing is that they also broke it down into those that had volunteered before university but weren't currently volunteering at university, and those that had started volunteering at university. And again, that sort of paints an interesting picture in terms of the time that people choose to get engaged. And again, you can also see that of the people who took part in SVW, 5% of them had never volunteered before, which again just shows an interesting challenge that we probably all face in terms of engaging sort of unusual suspects and people who've never actually volunteered before. If the next question, this was another interesting one. So this question asked, as a result of participating in Student Volunteering Week, are you more or less likely to volunteer again? Note that they were less likely, which was great news. 89% said they were more likely, and 11% said that they were no more or less likely. At Imperial, they used the statistic to write a report and that basically was showing the value of Student Volunteering Week. So we were basically able to say that because they ran Student Week at Imperial, that has made all of those students who participated more to volunteer again, which is obviously a fantastic result to have. So a couple of different examples and measurements and things to think about. Another question as well. So this one was, again, this is something that we are really keen to measure nationally this year. So this question of, is volunteering an important part of the student experience at your university? And the results are interesting. So half strongly agreed that it was important, but there were quite a few people who actually disagreed on that. So that paints an interesting picture in terms of what is student perception of volunteering. And I think Rosie and I, and we hope that you agree, we think that this would be really interesting to measure nationally this year. Yeah. So we're going to really encourage you to look at that. But as I said, we're going to send around this sort of template survey once we get closer to the week, and then you can pick and choose which bits of that you would like to apply to your impact measurement plan.
Yeah, we can look at this nationally. We might be able to identify some trends that in certain types of institution it's less or more important. Really interesting for us, but also for you to then take back to institutions or just to inform your work. Has asked a question, and I think the question that we can probably give an answer to, but it would be helpful if you could all contribute ideas to Natasha. So Natasha's asked, of what your students who don't seem to want to give up their time and pique someone's interest if it isn't necessarily related to their course. So if you have any ideas that they've done in their volunteering teams that might be able to help Natasha. Natasha, the reports that I mentioned before might give you a bit of an insight, but we've also got on the Student Opportunities Resource Hub a document that talks about how to the barriers that students say are in the way that stop them participating. So I link that to you all as well. I think what I advise, if in your situation, is to go talk to students. So whether you send some of your volunteers to go out and talk to their peers and say, do you volunteer? Yes, no. If they say no, why don't you volunteer? And just try and work out what it is specifically in your institution that's a barrier for your students, because it might be something that you can fix, or at least start to look at. So if you have that would be really helpful. We're running out of time. Well, we're not running out of time. We're coming to an end of the webinar. So you've asked now to ask us any questions about anything we've talked about with the people in the space. So like Natasha's done, and offering now, which is really helpful. You're offering some examples and ideas. Any questions? We've got about 6 minutes left of the webinar, and you're absolutely welcome to ask any question, whether it's specifically about what we've talked about or something wider about Student Volunteering Week. As I said during the webinar, we're going to send a briefing document out, which is just a 2-pager with some resources like the research and also links to interesting websites. But we'll also cover the basics of what we've talked about today. So the activity that we got you to do, we'll outline that so that you can mind yourself and do it, or you can share it with colleagues, and information about the National Impact Strategy. We've got that for reference if you don't want to read it off the slides. So coming in for Natasha, thank you everyone. Our email address is on there. That's the best email address if you've got something related to Student Volunteering Week that you'd like answering. So that comes to Rachel and I, and we'll be able to help you hopefully. If you don't already follow Student Volunteering Week on Twitter, then the handle is there for you. So it's just at SVW2015. Hashtag is #SVW2015. It's very simple. So if you enjoyed this webinar, think about it, because it's interesting for us. It's nice to know that we've helped you. If you didn't enjoy it, or there's something that specifically that we could improve on, then do let us know. Email us, or we're going to send a really short survey out to you, because we'd like to measure the impact of this impact webinar. It's really short. It's like 5 questions just to find out what was good, could we improve, and what you learned basically. On the screen is the Facebook details if you want to join us on Facebook. We put a cool picture on there and information about stuff that you can do. Please do share that with your students, because we're hoping that lots of students will join in on Facebook. I think we've just got a reminder about the last 2 webinars that we're coming up. So the next one's on the 20th of November. Will be in the same format as this one. The title is Cash, Community and Collaboration. What we'll have there is a little bit of information about how you might fundraise, either for your activities with Student Volunteering Week or just general fundraising tips. That's about kind of RAG activities like bucketing. This is more about grant applications and sponsorship. We're about community, so we'll talk about community organising and community engagement. So what you use Student Volunteering Week to go out into your community, or to institution or your students' union to make the community that you've already got there. We'll talk about collaboration, so that many levels. So it could be just collaboration between your team and the society's team in your institution. It could be between your college and your students' union, or it could be your volunteering team outside into the wider community. But also we're hoping that your Student Volunteering Week as a way to collaborate with other student unions or volunteering teams. And so we'll talk a little bit about, we've got a really good example from last year of what happened. We'll talk a little bit about where you can start, and if lots of you participate, we'll be able to team up in the webinar, and you can chat in the webinar with other people from institutions nearby. So that's the purpose and some of the things we'll cover in that webinar. And then the 18th of December, again 12 till 1, we're doing one about shouting about Student Volunteering Week with press, public relations, social media, and general communications. So we'll give information there, communicate with people with your audience, but also with people outside and with the press and community. So I hope that's helpful for you. just things that you can actually do now.
Yeah, we just wanted to give a reminder here. All of this is being publicised constantly on social media, but in case you're missing that, things that you can do right now include nominating your students for the Student Volunteer of the Year Award. Nominations close on the 12th of December. You can apply for a grant for one of the events that you want to run during the week. We're giving away 10 grants of £200. Applications for those are open until the 5th of December. You can publicise our T-shirt design competition. So this year we're handing the T-shirt design over to the students, and the applications for that close on the 7th of November. So do publicise that to your students and encourage them to submit design. You can also register students for the Student Volunteering Week Bootcamp, which is a really exciting event that we are be hosting at City Hall, London, on the 3rd of December. It's open to students from all the country. We're going to bring everybody together and walk them through basically how to plan really fantastic SVW activities. Information about the grants and the T-shirt competition is already on our website, studentvolunteeringweek.org.uk. The Student Volunteering Week Bootcamp information and registration form is going to be online on Monday, and we will shout about that on Facebook and Twitter as well once it's live. But those are all things that you can be doing right now.
One more minute, if anybody has any questions, just answer. We can answer them now. Thank you so much for talking on the chat bar and participating and sharing ideas. It's really helpful. And it's a lot more interesting when you talk to each other than just when I talking at you. And we hope that you'll join us in the next 2 webinars. Please share information about these webinars with colleagues that might find them interesting. Open to everybody. They're not locked or private. We're hoping to get as many of you as possible joining in. So that's really good. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now, and so we finished the webinar. Thank you all so much for participating, and thanks to Rachel for everything that you did for this webinar. And hopefully we will see you all soon. Please email us if you have any further questions. We will send a document within a week, so we'll just type up all of the discussion came through from the chat and any more questions that you had, and we'll make sure that we send that out to you soon with the recording of this webinar.